So hi, I'm Imogen, and I'm a second year studying engineering, so I'm a bit of an imposter in the psychology podcast. But I'll be passing on some information from one of the other members of the exec, who is Gabby. He's our networking event coordinator, and she's a third year psychology student at John Snow. And I'm here with Katie.
Hiya, I'm Katie. I'm a third year psychology student from Hildbede, so very happy to be here.
So Katie's our course rep for our new student support scheme, and so we're just going to have a quick chat about some general advice about studying in Durham and some more subject-specific advice about studying psychology. And I'll be passing on Gabby's notes. I won't get involved with my own personal experience as an engineer. Okay, so I know that Gabby has said in her advice that it's really important to be organised and on time to lectures and everything. She said that she liked to have a planner, so with deadlines for summative and formative, and also like to chip in there that I didn't know what a summative and a formative, the difference between them were when I first started. Just for anyone that might be in the same situation that I was, so a summative actually counts towards your final grade, and a formative is just there.
No, I was the same. I didn't know the difference. It was quite confusing. Everyone was saying, "Oh, there's a formative deadline. Does it count? Does it not count? Where's the clarification?"
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. If no one tells you, because they assume you all know.
They never actually clarify, so that's good to clarify that actually.
Yeah, and Gabby also says colour coordinating her notes really helped her to work out what her important was, and setting personal targets for reading and things. Did you find that was helpful for you, Katie?
I did actually. I had I never had one before, but I bought a wall planner, and it was nice because I could visualize everything on my wall, and I like to color code things, so things that were deadlines maybe for tutorials or for lectures or for specific modules. I found that quite useful. I had a diary as well, but also I like being able to just see it very clearly on my wall, all the specific deadlines. That's not something I really ever did before coming to uni, but I found it really helped me to feel like I was sort of aware of different deadlines and nothing was going to sneak up on me all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's so true, because I feel when you're even feel like a central thing, the school know what they're giving you, whereas the different modules, I don't know how well in psychology, do they coordinate? Do they know when they're giving you assessments compared to other?
They did try to. So with certain for example, it was introduction to psychological research, they had some lab reports that we did, and they tried to make sure that they didn't sort of all fall in one term, so they would sort of spread them out a bit more. But then obviously with other modules, like for classical papers in psychology, like the tutorial module, they did give you some essays, and sometimes deadlines were close to other module deadlines, but I think they did try to keep them separate, not always that separate, but they didn't have them on the same day, I think, as far as I can remember.
You got them all color coded and organized, you know what's coming up, and you're not going to get
no surprises.
So in terms of some psychology specific advice, Gabby said here about not being disheartened by results in your first assignment and dwelling on the marks, because you've got a lot of time to improve. So did you find that was the same for you, Katie?
Definitely, actually, because I think sometimes coming straight from A-levels and then going into uni, maybe have this mindset of, oh, I want to do really well, I want to get sort of the higher marks, and it's completely normal if in the first assignment you're kind of oh, that's not what I expected or not what I wanted or something like that. But you really shouldn't get too disheartened, because if you do, just with time you will improve. And also something I would say is don't be afraid to ask for help or ask questions. If you get feedback, to follow it up, to go and ask the person who marked your paper or essay, to ask them, oh, how could I improve? Because I think a lot of the time, and this applies for lecture content as well, or tutorial content, you might feel a bit intimidated by the lecturer or feel like they're expecting you to know everything the sort of from the get-go. But I don't think that's true, and I think they really do welcome people coming and asking questions. I think they'd always much rather you ask, and sometimes they're actually just really flattered that you found that you're showing an interest in their subject. For example, with stats module, and I think it's introduction to psychological research, a lot of the time we were given kind of questions to do after the lecture or after the workshop, and you do them in your own time, and I think they do provide the answers. But sometimes I would find if I didn't get the same answer as them, I'd like to email just to ask them how they got there, or I'd have meet up with them in person. I suppose this year it could be a Zoom meeting or something, and they were always really friendly, and there was never sort of a vibe of, why don't you know this is so obvious kind of thing. It was just we're happy to sit and take our time with you and to kind of go through the different kind of like ways of how we got to this answer. And I always really appreciated that, because I suppose a small part of me kind of was scared that they would be kind of a bit judgy or think like, oh, why is she asking this question, or like, she's at uni now, why is she asking for help? But that's just totally not true, and definitely is worth asking, because people will just sit with you and go through stuff, and most of the time like they're not as scary as you think, if you're thinking that a lecturer seems really intimidating or something.
Yeah, definitely. It's so intimidating, and now it's online, but when you're in a lecture theatre and there's like 200 people watching them, they can seem like a very like intimidating figure, but then you email them and they're just like, hi, you're
it's
right.
Like really friendly, like sending you little emojis on their emails. You're like, oh wow, okay.
Exactly. I remember sending a really formal email like, dear professor.
I know, I always find that so funny when you send a really formal email. Yeah, and it's such an informal response, and you're like, oh.
Never mind.
Never mind, oh well.
Next time you're like, hi Frank.
Yeah, literally. Or lowercase, you're like, even my name, really?
So true. But yeah, it's so easy to be intimidated. It's like, it's definitely really good to ask for advice, isn't it?
No, definitely.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, I was just going to say as well, like, try not to compare yourself to other people as well. So like, some people may get stuff instantly, or some people might not, and don't feel pressured or don't feel like you're doing it wrong if you don't kind of like move at the same pace as everybody else. And also just in terms of like taking notes at uni, something which I found a little bit stressful in the first few weeks was that everyone was doing different things. So some people were like writing on paper with pen, and other people had their laptops, some people had recording device, or just sat and listened. And I think that kind of stressed me out, because I was so used to being in a school setting where everyone kind of just did the same thing. But really just it's what works for you. So if you like, at first, for example, I was writing notes down on paper, and then as time went on, I kind of ended up just using my laptop, simply because I liked having everything in one place, having the PowerPoint site, and then being able to make notes underneath. Having all the information there just made it sort of clearer to me. But it's about what works for you, and not sort of like feeling that if your method is different to someone else's, then you're doing it wrong. Like, it does take time sometimes at uni to figure out what works best for you, but no, that's probably like, yeah, I'd probably say that too.
Yeah, definitely. Because like first year, I feel like, I mean, I think is it formative for you as well, like in psychology?
Yeah, formative.
Exactly. So it's very much like everyone takes the attitude, like the lecturers up to you, that like it's to learn how to learn at university. Like that's what it's there for. So
take the time to figure out. Yeah,
take the time to figure it out, and like it's definitely worth figuring out what works for you, and not just pursuing a style that isn't really your thing, because like it will help you in the long run to know that you like drawing pictures and like, you know, like printing out the handouts, or like you don't,
a more visual kind of, no, completely. Because I also think, because it is a formative year, it's sort of about adjusting to being away from home in that sense, but also kind of adjusting to a new way of learning. So because it is quite independent compared to like A levels or sort of like school kind of teaching, that I think I'd say don't feel the pressure to just sort of know what to do instantly. Like, you do sometimes have to do a bit of trial and error, like, does that work, does that not work? And if it doesn't work, then it's not necessarily a bad thing. You just go, oh, I can tick that off. It doesn't work, I'll move on to something else.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's completely fine to have a look. I mean, I know Gabby's got here a bit about, she said don't rush to write everything, and like she sometimes said like important bits that aren't on the slides, like try and note down in lectures, and then it's quite good to like test your memory afterwards. So like there's different techniques that can help you there. And so I think you had an interesting point about sort of the seminars as well. You do tutorials, is it?
Oh yeah, so normally in psychology there is like a 1 week tutorial. I think it's for classic papers, if that module is the one that runs still in first year, and it is typically, like, as a tutorial, kind of is like a smaller group of people, and they do encourage you to try and kind of like get involved with group discussion. And I think that is really important, actually, because something that I kind of felt before I kind of properly got into first year was that I was worried that if I got something wrong, someone would, like, I'd be judged, or sort of the tutor would be like, oh, that's really stupid, why would you say that? It's totally not true. Like, it's always better to just contribute something, because even if it isn't correct, you've now given sort of a line of thought that people can kind of like develop on, or just sort of bounce off of. And once you do it as well, it kind of like, it just, you realize it's not as scary as you think it's going to be. And often when you do it, other people then go, oh, it's fine, we'll join in as well. It just sort of, it's a nice opportunity to have some similar like classroom teaching, just because lectures are sometimes very much, you sat down and you're just kind of like hearing all this information. It can be quite like overwhelming if the lecture is moving really fast. So yeah, I just say it's better to speak and get something wrong, because you do learn from it. and also like you may get it right, so you just, you know, it's always worth just saying something, and everyone's sort of like in the same boat, so nobody's judging.
Yeah, completely. Like, I mean, especially it is so good that you do get that interactive, like one-to-one, well, not one-to-one, but like a group teaching time.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Like, if it might as well be a lecture if you sit there and don't say anything. So like plucking up the courage, like definitely sounds like the best idea.
No, definitely. I think it's just quite nice because you get to meet more people on your course as well, just because obviously Durham has the collegiate system and that is amazing, but it does sometimes mean that you don't get to meet as many people who do your subject outside of your college. So it's a nice chance to get to know people. And I'd probably recommend as well, like when you get put in your tutor group, maybe forming a group chat so you can kind of have that contact and communication with people. And just it's a nice chance to get to know more people, especially in this current climate where perhaps it feels like there's more of a barrier to that. But so I definitely recommend sort of getting to know people in your tutor groups.
Yeah, definitely. And then that really helps like with understanding work as well, if you got like
I can go and ask someone like, oh, what are you doing for this, or how should we go about doing this, or something like that.
Definitely, you can all stuff it together.
Yeah.
So Gabby's got in terms of textbooks as well, like you don't need to buy all the ones that they sort of recommend. Like would you say this is the same kind of thing?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because a lot of the time lecturers might be like, oh, like here are the textbooks for this lecture, and then at first you might feel like, oh, I have to buy these books, but I don't necessarily think you do. I'd say probably check in the library to see if they have the textbook. You don't have to necessarily go to the library, you can search online on Duo, I think. And if the textbook is available in like an online form, that's the best thing to do, because otherwise you're just going to end up spending quite a lot of money, because some of the textbooks came to about £40, and you just buying a textbook for each module, just I don't know, it's just so much money. So, and some of them as well, like a lot of the textbooks are sort of that they're so similar to the slide content, because the lecturers base a lot of what they teach on the books. So it's sometimes I'd say it wasn't too different when you were reading a textbook and then after you've done the lecture. But having said that, obviously it is very personal. If you find a topic specifically quite interesting, then maybe it would be more of an investment to get one. But I would say that for the majority of textbooks, maybe check if they're available at the library first before you invest, just because a lot of the time, especially in first year, I feel that the major content is sort of the content that's given to you from the lectures.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't want to like overwhelm yourself with like
so
much extra reading.
It can feel very overwhelming, but especially in first year, I feel like it's best to like grasp the lecture content and really kind of feel like you understand that, maybe because just going over the lectures after you've had them, because something which can happen quite easily is that if you have a lecture and you feel like, oh, that was quite tricky and I found that quite difficult to get my head around, it's easy to just kind of be like, oh, okay, moving on to the next lecture, I won't really think about it. But a lot of the time lectures sort of, they build off of the previous lecture, so it's better to kind of keep on top of it in that sense. So maybe instead of like seeking out all this kind of like extra reading, maybe try and make sure that you've truly grasped the concepts of the lecture. Just because I know, for example, in first year there's a topic, I think it's vision or perception, and it's quite like quite intense content. It's quite content heavy and quite technical. So I'd say like spending a lot of time sort of grasping all of the lecture content, and maybe then looking at like the textbook content to sort of help explain it, because you might find it explains it better. But I would definitely say looking for those books, maybe it's either secondhand, but I'd say mainly on the library website.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Gabby says we can also access them online, so I'm sure the library website, I'm sure there'll be emails sending around at some point. I mean, I think that's like all the advice that Gabby's got really as well. And I think just about like lab reports and essays and things, like making sure they use that feedback and building on it, and that and understanding lecture content is probably like the best sort of resources you can use to help you get through the course.
Yeah, definitely. Just not being afraid to sort of get in contact with lecturers as well, like building that contact with them, because if you do get some feedback and you're like, oh, I don't really understand what they mean by this point, it's always better to just clarify, even in an email if you're not going to meet. But like I think it's always better to just sort of I don't know, have that extra time to to really understand why they maybe gave you the mark they did, or how you could improve next time. Like, because sometimes you can get a mark back and you think, oh, like I don't really understand why it was this specific mark, and the feedback is quite vague or just not very detailed, so it makes it hard to sort of know how to improve. I guess sometimes maybe lecturers are quite busy, so just emailing or asking to arrange a meeting, I think you'll probably get more sort of useful feedback.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I know in engineering they have the office hours as well. Do they do that for psychology? So you can like drop in to the Zoom calls probably
so
now.
I think lecturers will have on their page on Duo their office hours on there as well. So if you did want to kind of like, I guess, have a face-to-face meeting or even a Zoom meeting, you could probably look at that and sort of arrange something with them. And they'll probably be really open to it as well. Like every time I've ever emailed asking to meet with a lecturer, they've always been very kind of open about it. They've been, yeah, that's completely fine, come along, my office hours are this and this, my room number is this or whatever. They've always been very friendly, and it's always, I've found, very useful.
Yeah, definitely. So have you got any COVID specific advice for our poor first years going into this very different university landscape?
No, it's very different. I'd have to say, I know it sounds a bit cringy, but just try to put yourself out there as much as possible. And I know it's difficult because obviously now with this whole current climate and COVID situation, it feels like there's more of a barrier in place sort of preventing people meeting other people and getting involved with things. Like I do college netball, and what I like about it is that you have different levels. So some of it is sort of like more for sort of really committed players who want to win loads of matches, and other teams are sort of more social, and it's a nice chance to meet other people. And I'm pretty sure it depends. I think we're having an announcement later on this term about whether sports can go on, but if they can, I would recommend doing that. But also like for example, specific to psychology, I think the Psychology Society is running a Zoom meeting for people to meet other people on their course. I think it is specific, it might be specific to first years, but it might also just be a general sort of meetup. But I would definitely recommend doing that, because you'll get to sort of have the chance to meet people that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have had. But I do appreciate that it is difficult, and it may feel more artificial just because it's online. But I guess everybody is in the same boat, and people do want to meet other people. So I would probably just say, like, and also in terms of like online lectures, make sure, like I think you said earlier, like having a good structure to your day, not just sort of letting the day fly by, or you know, even just kind of not giving yourself a break. You know, make sure that you still treat it as a working day with good breaks, and maybe go outside for a bit, go on a walk, go and have some great walks. Yeah, has to be done, just because it's so easy to sit inside and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I haven't been outside, or I haven't, you know, had much of a break, or I haven't like worked like enough hours because I've been distracted or something. Like having good structure is taking care of yourself. But no, it is difficult, but like I just say put yourself out there as much as you can and feel comfortable doing. But yeah.
Yeah, that's so true, and that I think that covers everything. Unless are there any last words of advice before we finish off the podcast?
I guess I'd say maybe to consider joining the Psychology Society, actually, because they sometimes have some really cool talks, and I'd recommend doing that. But also, yeah, just don't be too hard on yourself, and I hope you have a lovely year.
Brilliant. And of course, Katie is our psychology course rep for our new student support scheme. So if you'd like to get in touch with her about anything, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer questions on our Facebook group on 3 Women in STEM.
Of course, very, very happy. Last questions.
There we go. I mean, thanks for listening, guys.